I've been asked a lot over the past few months is, would you do transition pictures for comedian George Carlin, who died in 2008 of heart failure at the age of 71. He was a massively iconic counterculture figure. Remember his 7 dirty words that you can't say on television that he tried to say on tour in clubs and was arrested 7 times for doing so. But I really didn't know anything about him, actually. He didn't make an impression on my life. And the first time I ever heard of him was when he played Rufus in the Bill and Ted movies. But of course, if you're American, then you may have seen him on The Tonight Show. You've seen his HBO stand-up specials. He was a massive figure in comedy. And I know he was born into a Catholic family. I think he went to a Catholic school. But later on, he said, no, I'm an atheist. I don't believe there's a God. Although he did believe that there was some kind of organizing intelligence about the universe that had formed it, which was very enlightened of him. When I went into the energy, there was that cavern, that metaphorical cave that I always see that represents the initial stages of the transition process. And he was on the ground, revolving, powered by his own legs, but going round in circles. This was the wind down from his life, the last burst of energy. Because eventually he slowed down and stopped. And he sat up and he looked around. Quizzical, but calm, with a sort of pragmatic, oh, so we're here. This is it. He was trying to marry his established beliefs about what life after death might be with what he was seeing here. And he just sat there. There was no movement. He was just taking it all in. And although in life he may have been insecure about a lot of stuff or humble about a lot of stuff, he was a great performer. And that greatness was part of his awareness too. But he stood up. And in walking around this symbolic space, he realized that he was quite tiny. And the space was really large. So whatever reputation he'd had, whatever greatness he'd had on the mortal side of things, doesn't apply here. You leave that at the door, and now you are just a soul transitioning. So he carries on walking up the tunnel. And as he does so, there is a rumbling, a trembling under his feet, and a great fissure opens up the length of the tunnel. This has an interesting effect on him. He was an atheist. He said so. He made fun of religions. He didn't believe in the traditional form of God and all that kind of thing. But there was something about this process, this fissure opening up, that stirred up elements of his unconscious, of fears of, oh my God, what have I said? Am I going to go to hell? Is this it? Is this how it all ends for me? Is this where I go? Were my teachers in childhood correct? There was a big, long, fiery pit. But it was a reminder that we can choose to jump into that pit in life, or we cannot. We are in control. We are responsible for our lives. We jump or we don't. We believe or we don't. We participate or we don't. That decision is part of our sovereignty. He carries on up the tunnel to where the chamber with the light is, the dome that I always see, which is symbolic again of the final stage of the transition, where that is. But there was no light. He goes into this chamber and it's completely empty and hollow and cold. And there's a moment when he sits down when he goes, so I was right. This is oblivion. This is where we all end up. We don't go anywhere. It's all a dead end. But then he looked up And the light that he was meant to go into was up above his head. And it's almost as if that light was saying, come on, you can do it. And he, down below, was looking up going, how? And in order to reach the light, he was being asked to let go of his preconceptions about what going into that light meant. A smart guy. A guy who was so observant and so perceptive about life on the mortal side had to cease adopting those attitudes in his consciousness on the spiritual side. And as he shed these beliefs, these narratives about what life was about and what it wasn't, about whether there was a God, whether there wasn't, and so on, as he let go of those, he began to rise. And he rose, and he rose, and he rose. And finally, he went into the light and was gone. There's an interview that Joe Rogan did with Guy Ritchie, the movie director. I've referred to this before. I'm going to put the link in the show notes below. But he talks about wearing a suit, literally and metaphorically. He says you have to be the master of your domain, of your kingdom. You have to not only wear the suit, you have to own the suit. That's authenticity. That's congruence with your soul and its path. It's a very profound interview, actually. But he's right. And George Carlin did that while he was alive. Which was why he was as successful as he was, and why we still talk about him now. He owned the suit.